Hi there, and welcome to the Data Talks podcast. I'm Mara, part of the curatorial team at the Architekturmuseum of the Technical University of Munich, and the team behind this series. At Data Talks, we explore the often hidden architectures of data infrastructures and ask why they matter to us as professionals, educators, and citizens. In our first 4 episodes, we look at how the digital shapes our spaces. From energy-hungry server halls to classrooms, and from busy streets to the networks of our minds. These episodes were recorded in winter 2023 during a seminar at TU Munich. If this sparks your interest, come see us in person in Munich too. Starting October 15th, this research and much more will be on display at the exhibition City in the Cloud, Data on the Ground at the Pinakothek der Moderne. And Data Talks will be subsequently updated with new episodes from the upcoming public program. So, keep in touch and have fun listening.
Hi, this is Ekaterina and our next episode of the podcast series where we talk about different aspects of technologies and their relation to architecture. In this episode, we will talk about digital tools. How do they affect the way we design and think? Is it necessary to learn every tool imaginable? And is it true that if you as an architect cannot train a neural network, you will lose your job pretty soon? Or do we still have some time to catch up? We're talking about digital tools, we have to acknowledge that they're not that accessible as schools and students would like them to be, I would say.
Why would I spend all this time learning those programs that I can use while studying, but then afterwards I won't be able to use because maybe I can't afford them. So I couldn't be able to continue working with them. So I think it's not just a question of how they are provided during your time of studies, but also after.
In that case, I like Blender is open source software, and that's a nice thing. It's a nice, like a bit utopical way we could, as a society, go that all the softwares are like free and super accessible. But I don't know if it's possible in this big tech world.
But I mean, that's the last and the Austin coin, just because it was so much easier to found, I think, architectural offices back in the 80s, 90s, and of course earlier, because the threshold for founding wasn't that high, and now you already need like 18,000 or 100,000 to get all your licenses that you need, and with 3D printer, if you want to be on the technical stamps that today you leave an office in the city so that people see you had in so the variable to really do it, or to do your own office is already so high that very also people with good ideas are not able to do.
I mean, what you just described is a brilliant example of how privilege shapes our profession in many ways, right? And also, I mean, you can span your discussion also endlessly.
Have you noticed that the programs you use affect your design? I became interested in this topic as one day I realized that when thinking about the design problem I had, my first thought was, okay, how do I model that in this program? And not, what would be a good fit? After that, I decided to ask others if this is something they struggled with, and if there is a correlation between this problem and the use of digital tools. Would banning computer programs help? How educational institutions should approach the digitalization of the industry? Should Midjourney be taught as a fair tool for generating images? Should everyone know nowadays how to code? How all that would affect the architectural design thinking that we essentially need to learn in the architecture school. To get more understanding of the issue, I talked to students and graduates from 2 completely different schools. One is the most traditional one I could think of, Academy of Arts in St. Petersburg. As still the 3rd year, it is strictly prohibited there to use digital tools. So we will hear some parts of the interview with Lisa, She got her bachelor and master degree from there and were kind enough to share her thoughts. Later, I talked to Vanessa. She is now writing her master thesis at ETH Zurich, where she previously did her bachelor's. And also, we will discuss this topic in our studio with Annika, Mara, Geraldus, Uli, Rosa, and Damian, and hear about their experience with digital tools. So now, let's hear from Lisa.
Let's start with introduction. My name is Lisa. I'm an architect, and now I work in a restoration firm. We always use 3D scanning, and after it, we make a 3D model in Revit. All of documents we make in this program.
And was it like difficult for you to learn all those programs?
For me, it's not so difficult because my attitude to these programs is like it's just a tool to make a project because project appear in your brain firstly, and after you make it into this program. When I studied in master was restoration and reconstruction or heritage of architecture, we had a lot of useful lessons about analysis of these buildings. We studied how to work with it, how to maintain it, and how to work in archives to make the analysis, and how keep the value of this project tool or building. And it really helps me now because in my studio I have no time to study. I need to work. All of my software I learn by myself because it's just until the third grade. You can't use programs because it's banned. Because for our teachers, our professors, it's important to teach how to think about the project without any tools basic on the your knowledges about architecture, history of architecture, and your skills of drawing. It is very important for our teachers, and they grown us as all time.
You think this is the optimal way, so you would not change much in this educational system. So you think you received basically everything that you need to work as an architect?
Firstly, they grow a taste. I think this is a vital thing. What I received in Academy of Arts. Because all things what I use in my job, I learn by myself as tools. But the taste or ability to analyze, I took from academia, and I really confidence about me as a professional. I made my master diploma by hand because it was a restoration renovation of monument of 18th century building, and I firstly I made a computer presentation, and I saw it not so good. I decided to make it by my hand, and I coloring it, and it was so good.
So it was like I don't know, 6 square meters you did, or was it?
Maybe 12 square meters. Yes, it's really yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
How long was it? Like, is it a month of work or something every day?
6 months. I work every day, whole day.
Then just to draw physically all those meters, it was like a couple of
No,
months.
yes. You notice that people cheating when they print firstly and after it coloring. I make it because I make in program. I use the AutoCAD. I made the plans, printed it, and coloring after it.
But this, like, still digital tools are not a part of official education.
In academia arts, now it is officially a subject or lesson, Grasshopper and AutoCAD. But when I was a student, we had only AutoCAD courses. After I graduate, my classmates now teach students to be professional in Grasshopper and Rhine.
Do you think like something changes? Because I guess like you graduated like with your bachelor's 5 years ago or something?
Yeah, 5 years.
Maybe like approach changed, or professors, maybe they're more like younger professors, maybe they are like more women, because what Alona also said, and I was very surprised that there are no women there who teach.
Yes. Now we have a really little quantity of women as a professors. I don't know why. We have a little bit more younger teachers as when I was a student. It's not so changeable system. It's really a efficient system, and it's not so changeable. It doesn't need to change a lot at all. As for me, it's not changed for last year.
So one question would be, if they're talking about taste, do you think this is related to not using digital tools in the first 3 years?
I totally don't agree, or I don't even know what it means actually, because like even though we all more or less got the same education, I would say we still, every one of us has different taste. And also I don't even know why this would be an aim to have like the same taste, that everyone has the same taste. Like I think it's something so subjective and so individual. And I totally don't understand how you would like learn taste from an education.
I'm not saying that I'm agreeing with it. It's just interesting that they said it, because I would say we kind of get a certain kind of taste here or at ETH, or I don't know. So it's a bit similar, like the graphics we do, the approaches we have, I don't know. But I think what's interesting there, they said they learned taste, and the tools she just had to like learn by herself. And I think it should be the other way around, like, right? Like everyone should learn the tools, and then with the same education of tools, maybe everyone is creating their taste.
Yeah.
But so is it? But it's still a part of the education to learn the tools, because I also don't really read to just learn. I mean, the education has like, I mean, it's also about, I don't know, values or about, say, concepts and stuff. But I mean, the tools are definitely also a part. I think it's a very delicate thing. So when they said what they say that they were talking about, they learn taste, maybe they also mean something else with it. I'm not sure if they mean like the aesthetic of a building, or if they mean, you know, they learn how to think differently. Maybe there is something implied there that we just misunderstood.
I guess it's actually in a way also similar to tools. It's just different. Like there are more like tools in your head that make you understand coloristics and make a better image, and just like more things you learn in art school. I understand it in this way, that this taste means like you know how to make a good composition for a picture. It is really fragile, this distinction between taste, like something super subjective, and this generalized taste. But this is, I guess, just good proportions and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I would also have to say that because it happens in St. Petersburg, the city with a very, like, I would say conservative architectural scene, because it's like mainly like the city center is preserved, so you cannot build a modern building in the city center. It's just impossible. So for them, they have to learn how to design by certain rules. Those rules are established and well known. So for them, maybe it's not about like freedom of choosing between all the architectural styles and possibilities. Maybe, of course, for students it is later on, but for professors, especially the ones who work there
because I think majority of professors they're in their 80s. Um,
Striking.
In their 80s?
80s.
Yep.
Oh,
What is the age of going to what is the name?
Retirement.
Not that you died, they also mentioned a lot of professors died recently. That's why they got some women professors.
What is the age of retirement there?
There is no retirement. You are a professor for your life. It's just
Yeah, you work to the so you can come to the studios.
But that's good,
Yeah.
because many philosophy professors here actually protest against the age limit of age because they want to teach the whole life, and what they can do now is just like write books. Anyway, sorry, intermezzo.
Yeah, but I guess they just, and for those, from those people, it would be weird to expect that they will be like technologically advanced or something. It's fine. Like they learned their way of drawing. It's also like they accept people to teach their only from Academy of Arts. So to teach there, you have to be from there. So it's very like exclusive community. And maybe for them, they have this understanding of what architecture is. So they don't. I'm not sure. I'm not saying they're all like that, but I think there is little skepticism about what architecture is, how it should look like, and so on. So for them, it's not the question. They have to just transfer their knowledge. They know what's right, and they just have to give it to students, and they come up with this, as they think, effective way of teaching. Yeah.
I must say, like, when I was listening to all those experiences, I compared to myself, and I'm coming from Riga, that is not so far from St. Petersburg, and I can really see from which, like, educational space our university got the background and the ideas, because it's actually a strange, like, it actually, like, we also couldn't use like computers, but only in the first year. We had a lot of old professors who just were there forever. And in a way, it was some kind of combination of this old St. Petersburg Academy system and modernized adjustments. And at some point, I even felt like maybe it's then even better to just stick to a really clear concept I have there in St. Petersburg, because for us, it was a bit of this confusion in this combination between part is really still really conservative and stigmatic about everything new, and the only important thing is the angle of the shadows in your renderings. For the others, there is some kind of new influence coming into, because of course it's not such an exclusive community. It's trying to be an open university, but it's also in a way struggling to find its own way outside of this system that somehow still seems to be working in St. Petersburg. That was one thing I saw there. When I studied, I felt that I would love to learn more tools in school, but actually when I went to work, I've anyway, all of the workplaces I have been working to have their own tools they use, and every time anyway I needed to learn something again. And I guess then I even didn't feel the necessity to somehow be like, maybe I would feel more like better about myself if I wouldn't need to waste, I don't know, extra time just struggling with this new program. But otherwise, I also, now looking back, I didn't find it so so bad that I didn't have those lessons about, because then like we would most likely learn to use ArchiCAD, and then everyone would have the same ArchiCAD buildings at the end.
I feel like us, for example, or like they also told you in the interviews, we're lacking a study of tools if we're not doing it by ourselves. Mostly. I mean, of course, it's like learning by doing with Photoshop or render with the CAD programs. But if you want to really go deeper into it, you really have to choose it. And maybe I think it could be more like of a mandatory part of future education. I don't know.
But which tools is it like? Is like the basics he should like be taught at like the education institute or like as architecture students? Because I know like when, for example, I'm learning Grasshopper now. Like the people who are doing Grasshopper, they ask me, "Hey, you didn't use Grasshopper yet?" It's like 10 times faster than drawing everything else. But I mean, maybe a lot of the people who are drawing more in an analog way, they don't even want to know about it somehow. So it's like, I don't know, that's like a question. If you, for example, say, okay, there are those courses you have to take, then you also change somehow the access to the tool. And yeah, I think I agree with this point that actually tools change the way or influence the way you think about architecture for sure. So if you're noting down a sketch on a tracing paper, or if you're doing it on a different type of paper, it's already a different way of drawing, right? The same would be if you use Rhino as a 3D visualization tool, or if you use it as a parametric tool, or if you use it to rapid prototype something in actual material way. I think it's the different way to use one specific tool changes your way of working.
And this is exactly the approach Vanessa uses. She is an ETH Zurich student, so let's hear about her experience.
I'm currently studying at the ETH in Zurich. I did my bachelor at the ETH in architecture. And I'm now in my master thesis. For me, I think I chose a professor that was focusing more on how the plans look and to have and to do powerful drawings. Maybe they don't really are like not that precise in construction details. I have, like, side note, never done a construction detail really. And I'm soon finishing my architecture like study, but it doesn't matter. I mean, sooner or later I'm gonna learn it. And I did a lot of collages. I did a lot of like these beautiful line drawings that are very strong, like in the way that they look. They have the certain presence, but they are not really these typical competition drawings, I would say. We didn't have the scale. It wasn't the scale like 1 to 500 or anything. It was the scale of when you stand in front of the drawing, what do you want to see, and how do you draw to bring the focus of the viewer to certain parts of the project that you want to show. And I think after the second year, you are free to choose any professor, but we have a huge like diversity of professors where we can choose from. And it gets more and more diverse because we have these equality and like discussions where we try to have also a lot of female architects, also a lot of female guests, or let's say diverse or like a variety of guests with different backgrounds. So that changed over the years. But I would say in general, like in the third year with the 2 semesters that you can choose, there's like a quite a big amount of choices that you can make actually. We don't actually get like lectures in the programs. We have to learn it by ourselves. I think actually the professors give us a lot of freedom, but it really depends on the design studio, because I think the one that I did in bachelor, where I did these line drawings, I think actually it would have made sense to do them by hand, but we did them in CAD and I think it was okay. And there were certain, it's hard to say because I always have these discussions with my friends, if actually the students took the references from the last semester and decided that this is the way to go, because they can see all the projects that the other students did, and this is kind of limiting ourselves to be more creative. And I think that is a big part, especially if you already see a way that works, it's going to follow that way very often. but I think we could have done different things to a certain part. But I think the other studio I did was robotic landscapes. And there you could not choose. You had to do Rhino, you had the plugin, you had to do 3D modeling of landscape, but that just because it's not possible to do it by hand. For me, who didn't at that point have the technical skills and wasn't comfortable with Rhino, or let's say at least not comfortable with Grasshopper, I didn't know how that works and how to use the different tools that are inside. And it was okay for my project to have very simple logic. And there were other students who were more comfortable in using the program. And of course they could do different things. But I think it's always about also consistency, like I would say, and showing that you're actually able to learn and not only showing that you already have the skill. So I think in that studio, I was not allowed to say, no, I'm going to do it differently. But that was because we had this robot, like this arm, and that would only work with this program. And so we had to learn it. But obviously they had someone who supported us. They had someone who knew how to reboot the robot if it didn't work and to help us. And that would be additional to the project. But I did not actually have the skill in Rhino. I was only doing CAD in the second year. I was barely able to do anything in 3D because we did not learn that. Now it's very different. First year learns it now. They learn 3D print in the first year to get comfortable with it, because I think they realized that when I started 2016, a lot of students that started in the same year, they are very uncomfortable and it's very hard to get used to the 3D modeling, especially because I think we learned it with certain programs that are actually not that easy to 3D model because the files get quite big. I mean, Vectorworks 3D part was not that strong when I started. ArchiCAD is, I think, very nice in 3D, but depending on the project, because I always did organic forms, I was always doing it in Rhino, so it was not. And I think there's so many other 3D programs that make it, I think, quite easy to get used to it. But I think because we started with the programs that were actually not that well, not there yet, I wasn't comfortable to do it. And then afterwards, I had already these negative memories of, it's going to be hard to 3D model. And I think now it's quite different. I think this is a big part. I feel like during my studies, almost everything I learned was also motivated by looking at other students, asking them, hey, how do I do that?
How, in your opinion, architectural thinking is connected to the tools that we use?
I feel like one of the most difficult parts is showing people what we think and making it visually and then also appealing. And sometimes, it doesn't happen now that often, but before it happened that I had ideas and it was difficult to test them out because I didn't have the tools to do it. And to be honest, hand drawing does work to a certain part, but it's not going to be efficient. And I also don't think that CAD is very efficient. I feel like to a certain degree, yes, but I feel like there we are maybe still sometimes a little bit too old school, because CAD and hand drawing is very close to each other. It's just more precise. Okay, there's 3D modeling that is different, but I feel like I always now at the end of my studies, I'm missing kind of the part of Grasshopper, you can program something, you can search something, you can automate things. And I feel like architects are losing a lot of time because we are still holding close these very old or traditional ways of visualizing architecture. And I mean, it sometimes when I have hard time to visualize something, I like to use references. But then, I mean, references could be everything. It could be text. It could be hand drawings. It could be sketches. It could be models. Then it can be images or colors. I feel like it's very hard. And also, I always feel like I want to be very careful with the references especially let's talk about like maybe Pinterest as like a source of reference. Sometimes it can be very misleading, or also make it very difficult to think ourselves of a way to represent something. Because I feel like sometimes we know how something would look nice, but actually, does it show what we want to show? And it often, that's, I think, the most difficult part, to show exactly what you want the other person to see. And by copying another idea from another project, it might sometimes not be like preset, like the right medium to show your idea. And actually, I think during my studies, I felt like sometimes I wanted to do a collage because it was the medium that would represent my idea. But sometimes I felt like I wasn't creative in that medium. And so I had to change to another tool. And that would always help me to find maybe a different aspect that could be interesting in the idea that I have. So if I do a model and I feel like, oh, this model, I don't know how to get to the point where I want to, then I will change to maybe a drawing, or I would change to a sketch, because it will help me like stay creative.
Oh, that's actually very interesting. I really like this approach. And yeah, like just trying different tools, like just building it with different meanings to see what works best, or like what helps to develop it.
I did like this AI neural network project because I wanted to explore like different tools, because I feel like in the time that we are currently living, it is very nice to be comfortable, at least to know that these tools exist and that I kind of know like the basics to use it. But I decided I'm studying because I want to learn different tools, and I know I'm going to be uncomfortable when I'm in an office and I have to try something else out. And I am someone who's very slow in the beginning. I'm very cautious. I want to do it right. And so I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to try it during my studies, like kind of break the ice, because I already know at least a little bit that I was able to do it. I wouldn't say I chose to go the technical path, but I feel like it's something that is part of architecture and we shouldn't separate it, because it can help us a lot to design things. And I feel like other disciplines related to architecture are already doing that, and that we are missing out if we say, no, this is not important for architecture. I think that would be a big mistake to say, no, let's keep on drawing in CAD and do the things like, I mean, it's fine, but I feel like at least if the tools are changing in time, we have to adapt. It would be weird to say, no, I'm not going to do it. And then eventually you get to the point where you work so inefficiently that you're going to get fired. Maybe it's not going to be now, but it might be in 10 or 20 years. I feel like the professors are not really interested usually in what program we use. They just want to see the result of it, and they don't care what the way is. Usually it's like you have the studio and a lot of people are maybe using Vectorworks, and then sometimes people just choose to change to Vectorworks just because it's easier to do the group work, and the same also for ArchiCAD. I have to say, I'm really not sure if I would say let's master one program, because in the end, all the programs are very similar, and it might help to be very good in one program, because then it's going to be easy maybe to get to the same level in another program, because you already know that you can do it and there's a way to do it. But I think it always depends on the person, because I know I'm very uncomfortable at the beginning. I was uncomfortable in the beginning, but because now I learned so many programs, or let's say I worked with many programs, I know how to get another new program. If someone gives me another, if I have to learn AutoCAD or anything, it's gonna be easy, because I know, I know the first week is gonna be tough, but I have to learn the different shortcuts. I have to learn the tools that exist, and then that's that. And that makes me very comfortable, but that's just because I learned to learn new programs. But I have to say, I'm not good at any of them. So for every project, I kind of have to relearn it. But I think it's gonna be fine because in the office, then they're gonna choose one. They're gonna work with one program, and then I will just dive into it, and they have their own structure, which also makes a huge difference in the workflow. But I feel like it depends on the student how comfortable they are with learning new programs. Because I'm not, I don't know what, I'm not that curious in nature. I'm working on that, but I'm not. It doesn't come naturally. And I know that for those who are very curious by nature, they have it easier to learn programs. But that's just not me, or not yet at least. Maybe I can talk about one studio I did for rendering. We learned Cinema 4D. It was very time consuming, but we also we always had these workshops, and we also had the booklet, and they always wanted to make sure that we learn the program, but we don't spend all the energy and like take away from the concept part, because that's kind of the most important part. The render program is only to visualize our idea. And obviously you saw the difference in like people who are very comfortable or already used it. But actually we had 2 students who were very, very good in 3D modeling, very fast, and they did beautiful renderings, but the concept was actually not that strong, and you still saw it even though the images were beautiful. And I was kind of surprised because I thought that the program is going to be the problem, and it's going to hinder people to show their project, but it wasn't actually the case. I mean, the rendering of everyone looked nice. And you were able to, like, even if there was a difference in the quality of the rendering, I think the concept was still more important. But I mean, for the student projects, you can always present. And then it's also very important. I mean, you always know, the storyline maybe is not that clear, or the concept is kind of like, it's not smooth. For a competition, obviously it's different because the image has to be catchy. But I feel like, I think I did a lot of studios where I had to learn a new program, and it was a pain in the ass. Honestly, at the beginning, I was like, whoa. But I just had to you have to invest in the beginning, and it takes more time than you actually get credits for. But I feel like architecture is always like that. But I feel like then during the process of the project, the program gets less and less important, and the concept like starts to gain like importance that it needs.
Yeah, I think what is important, maybe like for example, I learned all the tools at work during work already before going to university, and I think it's also because somehow you're forced to do it because you have to draw something. So I learned the most out of that. And what I found interesting also in several studios, or also, for example, one professor I once had, he didn't used to, like, he didn't know how to use Photoshop. Also, one of my bosses, but they somehow knew how to manipulate the outcome somehow, or like with which methods, I'd say, not like, like click on online to produce this and that, but like somehow, I know there's in Photoshop, there's one thing where you can manipulate, I don't know, the pixels with this and that, or somehow how to, I don't know, let's say a more abstract way of learning how to represent things, how to deal with tools, and also which tools to use.
Like maybe this is the most important thing, like just to know what's possible. Like as your boss, he knew that's possible with the modern technologies. He didn't know exactly where to click. Maybe for students, that's as well. Like you just kind of introduce everything to them, and you say, this is possible, and this is also possible, and this would for sure affect the way you design. Like if you use this tool, it would be like have to be aware that it would maybe influence you in this way, but it's still possible this, that, and this. And maybe this is just to give this overview. Of course, you cannot graduate and be proficient in all the possible programs,
there is no need for that. But just to come to the workplace and not be surprised hearing the new names of the like software, maybe that would be enough.
I liked in a way, like that goes together with the things you said, was one of the girls you interviewed. She mentioned that, like, because she's really like into this Academy of Arts system of thinking, but in a way there is some truth in this way that she said that she's not thinking with the tools. She can, like, she has the ability, she has learned, and from the education she has the ability to imagine the result. She sees what she wants, and then someone can help her to find a way to reach this outcome, or she figures it out herself. But it's a good ability, I felt like.
Or like how maybe you even navigate yourself in this architectural scene, because I think I also liked when you said that you were confused. And maybe students, they should be confused, because maybe when it's like higher education and there is like a clear path, maybe it leads to nothing. Because if you always told what you have to learn, maybe at the end there is no use of you as a good professional.
It's good to learn how to think and how to overcome your hard times of thinking, right? But if you have all the answers prepared, yeah, maybe you're right.
But I think that's like one of our trait is like modern. I hate the word, but as like this contemporary, newly in the last decades educated generations of architects, we are extremely capable to change tools, I think. And I think that's actually what happens in our schools also. I mean, like if you move from one office to another, then you have to learn the whole thing is new. I think if you're talking for the education, then I would say that the education should kind of make you able to have this openness in the attitude and flexibility in changing tools.
That's why it's important to teach the abstract way of how these tools work in general. General overview what tools in the end are. Maybe it's already too abstract for young bachelor students, but I don't know. It's like somehow easier to understand how the tools work instead of just using them and like just learning exact commands which are doing this and this and not knowing what is behind these commands. You need theory for that. You need to theorize what you can do with a pencil or with a Rhino program or with shortcuts. I mean, I love shortcuts, for example. I would say that's the most important thing to learn. How to do something. Like when you read a paper, the first thing I do is I skim through the whole text, which means I read every 5th or 10th line and I get the gist of it, and then I decide which paragraph I want to read more. Maybe I'll look at the footnotes. And so there's a conceptual, I think, way of using words as tools to enter some piece of writing. And I would think in like using the digital tools, I feel like there is a lack of that kind of conceptual understanding of what you're actually doing when you're in this symbiotic relationship with this machine in front of you. You're like inputting some information, something comes out of it. You're like becoming almost one with this machine. And so understanding that requires like a little bit more conceptual thinking, which I think has to come from a bit more like interdisciplinary settings with different kinds of people from different fields, like from the arts especially, I think for our or from the anthropological sciences or ethnography, right? How do they use digital tools would very much influence, I think, how we use as well. So I think like the awareness of using digital tools in education, I don't think it's at that level where it can theorize, but it's only at the level where it can be manipulated or used. And so another, of course, I'm just going to hear hacker culture. I mean, hacking as an attitudes, as a kind of creating of community is super important aspect of the development of any software. I mean, the hacking culture is solely responsible why we have like open source software, open code, and Creative Commons and so on. So, all of this is part of what happens behind when you open AutoCAD. And so I think we need to think this through somehow. I don't know how exactly, but somehow.
It would be interesting to see how engineers or computer scientists, what tools they use or how they do it during their processes in offices, just because at some point probably we're gonna somehow work together or at some point in our lives. So I don't know. So it would be interesting to already connect with other departments, other branches during studies.
It's again, it's question like this topic about mediating. That then maybe you don't need as architect to learn every tool. You just need to know whom to ask, right?
Because otherwise you have to learn everything.
Yeah, then you just learn everything and do everything, and then
In university, especially here, when we can work interdisciplinary, we can try different things. We can learn basically anything we can think of to some degree. And then after graduating, the usual career path of an architect is kind of boring. So the question is, do we actually need to learn all those nice things to be introduced with them later on, to not be able to use any of them? Like, we learned how to build those very nice models out of gyps or out of wood, but no one needs it. Like, in architectural office, there's a designated person who does everything. Then you learn maybe how to manage a BIM project. If you like it, you can learn it. But then in the office, there is a designated person who will do that for you. So your knowledge is also like kind of, you learn too much maybe at some point, and then you're disappointed that no one needs it. That's goodbye.
Good point.
But you could also study all those things and then become one of those designated people, right? That build the models or that manage the BIM. So I think studying is always, it's important that you kind of learn or introduce to a wider range of things or topics, whatever, so you can kind of choose your own path.
So that was it for today. I would say I learned a lot from my fellow students in terms of how digital tools should be approached within architectural education. And I want to thank everyone for their contribution to this episode, and see you next time.